Hi guys, how you all doing? Hope you're keeping safe and well. And continuing this series of Brown Car Guy and Buddies. Today I'm talking to another good friend of mine, also based in Dubai, and he's got a number of different hats that he wears. He's a DJ. He does karaoke. He does quiz shows, quiz nights, and stuff like that. But of course, I know him as somebody who's involved in the motor industry, and he's involved in events for media, for VIPs, for tourists, if you like. He's a pro driver. He's an instructor at the Dubai Autodrome, but has also done work throughout the Middle East as well. So it'll be really interesting to catch up. I've known him for quite a while through various events and stuff that I've done with him over the years, and it'll be interesting to catch up with him and catch up on his experiences on what it's like to do these sort of things over there. And as an aside, as a very useful aside, he's also a little bit of an aficionado when it comes particularly to the era of modern classics. So I'm going to be picking his brains a little bit on that and maybe trying to entice out the top tips of what people should be getting into right now as soon as they get out of this lockdown, and actually it's a good place to put their money. That's all to come. Before we get into that, make sure that you're subscribing to this channel. Make sure you hit that bell icon so that all the notifications are on. So as soon as I upload a video, you hear about it. And of course, follow me on all my social media channels. Just search for hashtag BrownCarGuy. That's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, subscribe to BrownCarGuy.com. Also, if you can, come to my Patreon account, and there you'll find something very exclusive. I'll tell you about that at the end of this video. Hey Ian, how you doing? Long time. You all right? How's it going over there?
Really good, very long time. Good to see you online. I've been following your videos over the last few weeks and since you've left. So it's good to see you again and have a chat in the flesh.
Oh, it is. It's been ages. It's been absolute ages. Yeah. But so, I mean, just to try and introduce those people that are tuning in, the two people that watch, my mum and one other person.
So my mum.
Yeah, that's it. That's two people watching this one. When we first met, when would that have been? That must have been at some event, right?
Yeah, it would have been 2011 at Dubai Autodrome.
Oh, wow. You know specifically. So go on then. How do you know that?
It's only because it was the first event that I did that was a press event, and that was when I first started meeting the media in what I do now. Because I've been here 12 years now, but I've been in my current role for 9 years.
Yeah. So what was that event at the Autodrome then?
I had said to you before, I'm not going to mention any manufacturer names because I want to keep everyone happy. The reason being is because
you're still out there.
I'm still here, and I do work with a lot of different people, and I don't have any favourites.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was just trying to recall what that event might have been.
I'll give you a clue. I drive one.
So it'll be an FCA event.
Yes.
Not to name names, but to name names.
Yeah, thanks for that.
But to be honest, they always do pretty good events because honestly, their cars are just awesome.
Yeah. You know, I love all cars. I've grown up with cars. If it's got an engine and it's got wheels, and to be honest, now if it's not even an engine, it's an electric engine. Yeah. If it drives, I love it. I love cars, full stop.
So this is one of the things. So, obviously, I introduced you earlier in the intro. I said you're a pro driver. I tried to give people an idea of what you do, and we'll go a bit more into that. You know, you're a pro driver, you do events, you're a DJ, do quizzes, you do karaoke. But I know you as a walking, talking automotive encyclopedia, particularly, in other words, a sad anorak. But anyway, and particularly of what would now be termed the sort of modern classic era, isn't it? That's
Very
kind
much.
of where. So how do you know so much, and how is that era that you've picked? Why is that? Is that your lifetime era?
It's the lifetime era. Why I remember it, I don't know. I have a habit of remembering useless pieces of rubbish that no one else cares about. And I just retain them. And I might retain them for years, and then something will come up and I know something about it. Yeah. I don't know why. I was useless at school. I couldn't retain anything there. But, the start of it was I was brought up in a motor industry family. My father was a car salesman and then general manager. And from the age of 2 or 3.
Can you say what brand that was?
At the time he was with BMW.
Wow, that's pretty cool brand to get a grounding in, isn't it? How old were you at the time?
I would have been, well, I was taken home from the hospital in a BMW 2002. And my dad had just moved over, I think, from Chrysler or Hillman, as it would be in the UK. Yeah. He previously worked with Lamborghini and ESO in the UK.
Oh, wow.
And then when I was about 2 or 3, he would have been with BMW Park Lane, as it was, which was the UK concessionaires.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday mornings, when my mum needed a break, he would take me into the showroom when I was about 3, and he'd just let me wander off, and I'd be sitting in all the cars, pressing all the buttons, and I was having a great time.
Did you sell anything?
Probably not, no. but I think that's where the love of cars came from, and Dad at the time was bringing home all sorts of cars, because working in central London, it was the high end market then.
Yeah, that's right.
He was bringing home Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Lotuses, you name it, he brought it home. So by the age of 5, I pretty much knew everything that was on the road.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then the love came from there. And then I grew up getting into cars myself in 80s and 90s when I started driving. And now all the cars that we all lusted after then when we were in our teens, now we see the prices of them absolutely rocketing, because
just about everything. I mean, it's almost like every other car that I ever owned has actually shot up in value. So if I just remember a few, like the CRX, the Supra, Celica Supra, the E30 BMW. I mean, all of those cars, if I'd kept them.
I've given up thinking about it. I had two-door Mark II Escorts.
Oh man!
Which I remember buying and selling.
And
for
you had
less
a
than £1,000.
you had a 2.8 Capri, which I was so jealous about, because I wanted to get. Actually, I had the Supra because actually I had been saving up to get a 2.8 Capri. So I figured at that time, must have been early 90s, and I think I'd saved up about £2,000. I figured I needed about 2.5 to get a good 2.8 that I was after. And then one of the guys that used to contribute to the newspaper where I used to work, and he turned up one day in a Celica Supra. And I went down to see him off, and I was like, what the heck? And it's just so not him. It was not him at all. Yeah. You know, he was a very staid, very serious sort of chap. And I'm like, and this thing has got pop-up lights, and it had the one with the digital dashboard and everything. And I'm like, I was smitten. And I'm like, what's the deal, man? Why have you got this car? And he goes, oh, well, a friend needed some money and he had to get rid of it. So I just, I've got it. So I'm going to get rid of it, though. And I was like, I've got £2,000 in my pocket right now. Would you? And he goes, it's yours? I was like, oh, my God. So then and there, so that's why the Capri never happened, because, I got seduced by a Supra.
I bought one. My best friend bought one, Barry. He bought one at the age of 18, a black one. And I always wanted one. And I went around, looked at loads of different ones, and I bought the white one first. And then later on, as it happened, I ended up buying the black one off my best mate.
All right.
So I ended up owning that car as well.
Oh my God! Well, not at the same time.
No, not at the same time. No, I sold the white one when I'd spent £4,500 on it trying to make it right.
Oh my God! Wow.
The money pits. They are money pits.
$4,500 back then would have been. That's a lot of money.
That would have been 96, 97.
Wow, that would have been a lot of money.
Yeah. And I still only sold it for £1,000.
Yeah. That hurts. That hurts,
Yeah.
And what are they now? They're at least £15,000, aren't they?
Yeah, they're 15 plus at the moment. But it's like everything from even the 70s. You look at the values then of cars that we didn't realise were going to be classics. And a prime example, and I'll never forget the conversation I had with my dad. He bought home, and I don't remember this car. It's one of the few I don't remember. He bought home a Daytona Ferrari.
Wow.
Which came in as a trade-in, and they didn't have
275 GTB. That one.
No, 365. The normal Daytona.
Right. But with the sort of the sharp end, the sloping nose on it. Oh yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
They bought it in and then sold it on afterwards, but he used it while they had it as a trade-in.
Yeah.
I said, just out of interest, how much was it?
Yeah.
He said, oh, this has been about 72, 73. So it was probably around the time just before I was born.
Yeah.
He said, well, we bought it for £4,000 and sold it for £7,000.
Oh my God.
And that's £1 million car now.
And he was just driving it around as well at the time.
Yeah. We lived in the back end of West London.
You see, so I'm going to go off on a tangent a little bit. It reminded me of a story. So when we were back in Saudi, so I grew up in Saudi in the 80s. My dad worked out there. Nobody in my family has any interest in cars. I don't know where my car genes have come from, because nobody even in the widest of social circles or the family circles, nobody had any interest. Certainly not my dad. He only started driving when he moved to Saudi because he had to. It was the only way to get around, and he hated it, to be honest. So anyway, one day he comes home and he goes, and he worked with another guy also from the UK. And he comes home, I can't remember his name. Let's call him Charlie for the sake of it. All right, he comes home and he says, Charlie's come up to me and he said he's seen this Ferrari 308. And it's in a dealership and it's going for 50,000 riyals. Now, that would be what, less than 10,000 pounds or something like that. And he says, and he's just telling me to go halves on it. Can you imagine the 10-year-old kid and me going, buy it. And I kept trying to persuade my dad to go with it. He said, I don't know about cars. I'm not interested. I don't know if it'll be any good. What are we going to do with it? I don't want to drive it. And I'm like, no, just buy it. And then they didn't. The car slipped through. Somebody else bought it. And then, of course, I think it was like a month or 2 months after that Enzo Ferrari died. And all Ferrari values went.
Yeah. I remember trying to persuade my stepfather to buy a brand new Sierra Cosworth at £16,000.
Wow.
Which is what
actually,
they were.
16. Weren't they about £20,000? Or was that? I'm thinking of the Sapphire.
The first one, the RS was 16,100 or something, and then it was 23 grand if you wanted the RS 500, and then obviously they went up from there as inflation happened. I was right. He should have bought one.
Yeah. I know. It's crazy. So anyway, so that dictates where that all comes from.
Yeah.
But then you did these other things. So you're obviously hedging your bets. You didn't want to. Did you set out for a career in the car industry, or did you okay, let me see. I've got DJing on the go. I've got karaoke on the go, and where am I going to end up? Was it that sort of thing, or this is where you wanted to end up?
Sort of. If you go back further to when I left school, I actually started work in an insurance company, because I thought it's a solid job. I'm not going to be a car salesman. I'm not going to go into the motor trade. I'm going to have a solid job that's always going to be safe. And after 18 months, I got fed up with that and decided to go and be a car salesman.
Right.
And then I was too young at the time, so I ended up working in car warranties as a warranty adjuster.
How exciting.
From there, I moved into it was. It's nuts. What's broken? From there, I moved into being a service advisor, service manager with various manufacturers. I worked with BMW as well. At one point, my dad worked with me, which was amazing.
Wow.
And then I came over here 12 years ago. And it's another conversation with my dad. I said to him a long time ago, I'm fed up with working hard and earning a lot of money for people, and I don't really see any benefit.
Yeah.
I'd be a lot happier doing something I love that pays me enough money to have a reasonable lifestyle. I wasn't ever going to be rich. I didn't worry about that. But I wanted to enjoy myself. And I quit the motor trade. I know it's a strange thing to say. I ended up running karaoke's and quizzes over here, which actually was a lot better off. And then I realised that I was only working 4 nights a week and I was bored.
Oh.
So I'd met James Burnett, who you obviously know previously.
The great James Burnett.
And when I had a chat with him at Dubai Autodrome, where he was working at the time, I had an assessment with Mr. Sean Stevens, and ended up becoming an instructor. And with a lot of help from the boys up at the Autodrome, I became an instructor, and then I carried on working with James, and that's how I ended up working with him and Drive Dynamics. So
had you done
evolved.
any sort of driving like that before? Had you done anything here? Had you done any track days or racing or anything like that?
Not really. I did a bit of karting when I was a kid, but that was it. But having the passion of being able to explain how a car works, actually in my industry, is sometimes more important than actually being able to drive well. I can hold my own, don't get me wrong. But being able to explain to someone who isn't technical how a car is working and why what they're doing is having that effect, sometimes it's just as effective. Sometimes you get racing drivers who can't explain what the car's doing, They can just tell you it's doing it. Whereas you get people who aren't racing drivers who can explain what it's doing. So I've got a sort of a bit of a balance. And
then you have journalists.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen how grey I've gone?
Oh my God. And that's just me.
I'm not pointing any fingers at all.
But you must have some stories to tell, which you can probably tell without naming names. But honestly, like, you know, I mean, we've done a lot of events together. We've done road drives, track drives, all kinds of stuff, you know. And, you know, you do go on some of these things and the skills displayed, and it's not always journalists, of course. Nowadays, you have an expansive arrangement where you have journalists and influencers and lifestyle people and all kinds of things and VIPs. So you immediately you see that there is quite an expansive range of skills that are available in these situations. So what sort of you know, anything that stands out in terms of being the scariest or the funniest incidents of these?
We've had all sorts of things happen. I did have one incident happen on an event in Bahrain. And actually, I think it was a VIP event that we were doing. It was a road drive. And we were coming from a hotel in the centre out to the racetrack and then back to the hotel again. And we're on our way back out, and I've got my train of cars behind me, and I talk to them all on a radio. So they know what to do, and they know not to misbehave on the road. And we all stay safe because the ultimate aim is to get everyone back in one piece and everyone happy. So we just left the racetrack, and I've stopped at a set of traffic lights, and there's some little beaten up car in front of me. And just before the lights go green, the guy's come off the brake pedal and rolled backwards into me.
Oh,
not hard.
My goodness.
It just bumped into the front of the car.
Oh, dear.
So I went to get out, and I've got on the radio to the guy. I said, guys, just bear with me a second. I know the lights are green, but the car in front of me just rolled into me. I'm just going to check the car. With that, the car in front has shot off up the road. Before I've even got a chance to get my seatbelt on, 3 of the cars behind me have shot off after him.
Oh, my goodness.
They blocked him in. I would never ever condone this. It was just very funny at the time. They've blocked him in like a rolling roadblock towards the side of the road.
Oh my God!
Pulled him over at a hard shoulder, right by. For those of you who've ever been to Bahrain, they have a lot of police checkpoints, and they pulled him up next to a police checkpoint. And the police have obviously got out with AK-47s and started running towards this car. By which point I've caught them to find this poor bloke absolutely terrified.
Oh my!
Almost at gunpoint.
Oh my God!
I'm like, whoa, guys, calm down. It's okay.
Oh what was the car?
They were all very protective. It was just an SUV. Just an SUV.
Wow.
It was just a change car.
Was it high end?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
So
high enough.
So there's this guy in this beaten up car, and he's surrounded by these high end cars.
Yeah. And police.
Oh my God.
I checked the car. There was no damage. There's a little mark on the plastic. It was absolutely fine. I said, look, guys, there's no harm. There's no damage. It's fine. And the police are like, shall we let him go? I'm like, yeah, let him go.
yes. Safety's back on. Yes.
Yeah. We're all right now. So that's the sort of, you know, safety, to be honest, is paramount of what we do because we're dealing with one, expensive cars, and 2, people's lives, and that's the main thing. We always want to be safe. So usually I try to get on the radio saying, guys, just pull back, get off him, don't leave him alone. Doesn't matter. But you know what they can be like sometimes.
Sometimes, you know, the adrenaline rushes to the head. And of course, you must have noticed that in some of the track events and stuff that you've done, particularly when you do obstacles and things like that. I mean, do you find sometimes it's, I mean, how do you deal with some people that get overexcited when, you know, for a lot of people, it's the first time they've been in that environment where they're on a track and they're like, oh, and to a lot of people, like, I can do anything now. It's that kind of, you know.
If I'm in car with them, bizarrely, it's a lot easier. I just talk to them, ask them lots of questions. Very simple.
Right.
And they slow down.
Right.
Because
is that a distraction technique?
It is.
Yeah.
Most people can't do 2 things at once.
Yeah.
And if you've ever, those of you who've ever illegally used your phone whilst driving on the road, will know that if you're on a highway, you start talking on the phone, and then after after a couple of miles, you realise you've dropped 20 kilometres an hour. And it's exactly the same. So I start asking the guys questions about anything apart from cars. They slow down. So actually, it works quite well. I've learned a few tricks that have kept me in one piece, and then you're still alive.
It's interesting you say that, because it's like, so I did a series back at Car Magazine. I did a series of interviews with CEOs where I got them to drive their cars. And the interviews were great because they were focusing on driving, and then we were on the road. So you could ask them anything, and you know, they would let slip stuff that normally they'd be a bit guarded with. You know, so it was a pretty good tactic. You know, but it is an interesting way of doing it. So in terms of, you know, but when you have to try and get people into that environment, and then, you know, teach them what a car can do, because, you know, the other thing is, like, one of the things I found, you know, a very common thing that you do in these sort of defensive driving courses is you do the brake and swerve test, right? And you get people to brake, you know. And what I find is a lot of people then go into the cones, and that's because people, for example, they seem to be shy of the brake pedal. People don't know just how hard you can hit a brake pedal, right?
You know, we try and encourage people. When the exercise you're talking about is when they're using full ABS, emergency braking, and you very rarely see it or use it on the road. Okay, so there's two things that people don't do on that sort of exercise. The first one is they don't hit the brakes hard enough, so they don't even activate the ABS. So they're going too fast to avoid the obstacle that we've set up for them in the first place. The second thing is they focus on the cones. And if you look at the cones, you will hit them. And it's like if you play any ball sport, whether it be football or cricket or tennis, they tell you to look at the ball. If you look at the ball, you'll hit it. So I tell them, look at the gap. And if you look at the gap, you'll hit the gap, not the cones. And generally we can get people around it. But they're scared of breaking the car when actually it's a system there to actually help them. And we have had people come back to us afterwards and say, do you know what you taught me actually helped me, because the following week this happened and I used what I learned and it saved me. So it might not necessarily save you, but it might help.
No, definitely. I think, you know, that's one of the things I've always found, is that particularly with ABS, and particularly with earlier systems on ABS, is because ABS, you used to have to go past a certain point with the brake pedal for it to actually work. And at that point, traditionally, and not so much in the modern cars, but in the older cars, it kind of feels like it's snapped and then it kind of rattles, you know. And that freaks a lot of people out, because a lot of people think they've broken something. They're like, oh no, I've damaged the car, I've damaged the brake pedal. But that's actually what it's meant to do. You know?
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people don't really know that. So one of the things that you have to do is to get ordinary people and push them past their preconceived notions or their personal set limits, if you like. But then on the other hand, you probably have a lot of egos turn up as well, don't you?
A number of them. a massive amount of them. Whether it's customers, media, whoever. Most guys in the world think they're the best drivers in the world. And that's just the way it is, especially if they're a petrol head. They think they're amazing drivers. When it comes down to it, we're always learning. The interesting thing is, if we get women coming along, they don't have that ego, so they're actually a lot easier to teach.
Right.
Because one, they don't want to die, and two, they listen. So we actually find that they can actually improve quicker than the guys. The guys turn up and eventually they switch off, they stop listening, and off they go. But we get some interesting characters, and it's really funny to see how sometimes the big ego drivers don't often go as quicker as the guys who are a little bit more timid, who actually listen, learn the techniques, and then go quicker.
No, it's interesting. You were mentioning the other day a mutual journalist friend of ours that's no longer around, sadly, and who always seemed to apparently underrate his abilities.
He hated doing exercises like that and track exercises. But when we put him on timed handling courses, he'd won a couple of times, but he'd generally be in the top 3. And he always said he wasn't a very good driver. And he would never get in a car with his colleague.
All right. Okay.
So I'm definitely not mentioning names now.
Right. But, although I think I know exactly who you mean. But okay.
It's a private joke for those of you who are watching.
Exactly. Yeah,
you wouldn't know.
I know. So, but these things can be a lot of fun, and they're certainly like a test of both the car and the skills. It's always difficult though for a journalist because, see, I've always struggled with track stuff, and the reason that is because I'm not a natural track guy, and I'm like, this is not what I'm here to do. And then sometimes you go on track days, and they're trying to instruct you to do this and do that, and you go, well, that's all really good if I'm trying to get a good line on the track, but that's not really what I'm here for. What I'm here for is to drive this car, because sometimes that's the one chance that we get to drive that car, particularly in an environment where we can maybe go quicker and stuff like that. So it's always really, I always find that as a journalist, as opposed to maybe your VIP crowd or your other crowds, your learner crowds, but as a journalist, it's always a little bit difficult because we're trying to contradict what we want as opposed to what the organizers are trying to do.
Yeah, I get that, because obviously you're looking to report it from a road point of view, because let's face it, 90% of the time, in fact 95% of the time, the cars are never going to see a racetrack. But it gives you an idea of what the cars are capable of, and if we've got a handling section as well, then it can show you how the car changes direction. Generally, I think that you probably get the car on the road afterwards as well. So it's an opportunity to have a bit of fun and push the limits of the car a little bit, and also to get a bit of excitement for you. So that helps when you write your piece or go to camera or whichever it is. Yeah,
but it's always quite funny because some journalists turn up and they're very, very serious about this.
Of course they are.
If a journalist turns up in racing shoes, I'm always like, okay.
I knew you were going to say that. I never forget this. It's not a journalist. I once had a gentleman turn up when I was instructing on a track, and he had Ferrari racing boots, he had Ferrari gloves, he had a full Ferrari race suit with Ayrton Senna's name on it, who's never driven for Ferrari, didn't have his own crash helmet. But I thought, okay, I'm going to step back when they asked for volunteers on this one. Unfortunately, I didn't step back quick enough, so I ended up instructing him. And I swear to God, he didn't go over 60 kilometres an hour for the whole track.
Oh, my God. Dear, oh dear.
It was the funniest thing ever. I'm like, this is easy. Left. Honestly, it was so funny. So it's going back to egos or perceptions.
Isn't it?
You don't always know.
Maybe he was just there for the Instagram post.
I think it was before that.
All right.
Before Instagram had got big.
Because I was thinking, like, if you've gone to all the effort and the expense of getting the racing shoes, getting the racing overall, getting Ayrton Senna's name inscribed on it, but then you didn't buy the helmet, it's like, well, it's like, you didn't go all the way. What happened?
I think he was on holiday, so he didn't pack it. I'm not sure.
Right. Okay. Dear, oh dear. And that's the other thing, isn't it? Because you do get, Dubai is obviously a hub for tourism. Yeah. And then obviously you get a lot of tourists, and a lot of tourists come down. They do the experiences at the Dubai Autodrome, don't they?
Yeah.
What are they in for when they come and do those sort of things?
They come in for all sorts. You get a lot of people driving the single seaters up there. A lot of people driving the GTs. We get a lot of tourists coming over and driving because they're petrol heads. They come to a hotel. They realise in Dubai, okay, you've got the weather when it's not middle of summer. You've got shopping. You've got the desert. You've got a few theme parks. What else is there to do? It's a racetrack. And that's when they think, great, I'll go up there. So we get lots of different nationalities. Some of them don't even speak English. So that can be a bit of a challenge. Yeah. We have to get go-betweens and translators to tell us the key words. So I think I know break in about 5 different languages now. Yeah. As long as I know that one.
all shouted at the top of your voice, right?
Yeah. The louder it is.
Go on, give us a few different breaks in different languages. Go
on. In French, it's Fren.
Okay.
Fren. In German, it's Bremser. Brems.
All right.
Polish, I think, is Tormos.
Oh, that's a lot. That's 2 syllables, man. That'll take too long.
Yeah, it's Polish or Russian is Tormos. I think it's about all I've got at the moment.
So if you got 2 syllables, you're in trouble because that's way past the marker board, isn't it?
It's too late. So it can be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun, and you all have a laugh about it afterwards. And in the long run, even though I'm in the passenger seat, I still got a semblance of control there.
So you provide those experiences on track, and then of course you do your DJ stuff, and you do your karaoke stuff, and you do your quiz stuff. Have you thought of combining these into one set experience?
It's been suggested. I did have a friend of mine who came for an experience one day, and I said, for the first lap, I'm just going to sing to you for the first lap. Yeah. She was quite nervous anyway. So I have done that. I have run a motoring quiz, which I did a few weeks ago. I know you've done one as well. So these little crossovers, and I've even been on events sometimes where it's not a manufacturer we work with for whatever reason, and someone else has hired me to DJ at that event. So I've been on automotive events as a DJ as well.
Wow, that's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And I have that. I actually have done one for one of the race teams, the World Endurance Championship at Bahrain a few years ago. I was doing hot laps for them in the morning with a couple of XF1 drivers, and then I was DJing for their end of year party at the end of it. That was good fun.
I bet it was a good gig.
That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
So what lies in future for you? Are you going to hang out in Dubai? Is that? I mean, at the moment, obviously things are really difficult there. Now, how are you coping with the situation at the moment there?
A lot of people in what I do, because we're effectively, to an extent, we're freelance. So if we don't work, you don't earn.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah, a lot of people here are struggling because historically a lot of expats live here paycheck to paycheck or with debt or whatever. Luckily I don't do that. So I'm okay at the moment, fortunately, touch wood. And I plan to stay here for the foreseeable, if we can all ride the storm. A lot of people are getting down about it. A lot of people are getting depressed, particularly with the situation. But you can't, nobody knows what is going to happen. None of us know. You've got lots of people saying, oh, the lockdown will be till October. It's going to be till 2023. It's going to be till July. Nobody knows. And until someone says, right, this is it, this is what's happening, there is no point getting upset and stressed about it, because we don't know.
No, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. One of the things that I've been looking at a lot, and we're nearly up, so this will be like hopefully the final point. But I'm sure we'll pick this up again in a future conversation. So one of the things that I've been looking at is obviously the markets for cars, both for new cars, used cars, but also for classic cars. And based on and even before this all happened, we saw classic car markets values coming down and stabilizing. Based on the experience of the previous recession, of course, a lot of speculators, a lot of investors moved into classic cars, and then the values shot up. So just to wrap up, because of your encyclopedic knowledge, especially of modern classics, what are your top tips for people that they should be thinking about getting into now, which I'm almost certainly going to go up in value? That's got you thinking, isn't it? That's got you salivating, honestly, hasn't it?
There's a question. If I knew that, I'd be doing it. I do believe that whatever happens in the next few months, once this lockdown and people are starting to get back to normal, I think there will be quite a large resurgence in new cars anyway, because I think everyone will be a bit excited to get out, and they will want to go and enjoy their lives because they know, actually, things could change tomorrow. Let's go and live. I still think that the 80s, 90s classics will stay pretty stable and probably go up a little bit more. A lot of people have said that the bottom's going to fall out of them again. But I think the people who lived in that time and were lusting after them then, now they've been married, they've had their kids, the kids have left home, they've got some spare money, now is the time for them to go out and get them. So if you had a car that you really wanted when you were 17, 18, 19, as long as it probably hasn't got a Ford badge on it, because they've gone nuts, go and buy it. You know, Renault 5 turbos are slowly creeping up. XR2 Mark IIs, you can still buy one for £6,000, but I've seen them for I've seen them for £15,000.
Yeah, but they're very rare now.
They are. You know, I had one of those as well. Any of the hot hatches and going into the end of the 90s, limited edition stuff, things like that. You know, there's a lot of cars that are starting to disappear. If you see it and you want it then, go and buy it now, because we're a long time dead. Go and enjoy your lives.
I think that's a good note on which to end this on. So thanks so much, Ian. It's been fantastic, absolutely wonderful to catch up with you again after so long. Just before we sign off, let people know how they can find you, because I know you're doing a lot of stuff online as well, and you're doing quizzes and DJing and stuff like that. Just let people know where they can find you.
I am, thank you. If you're into quizzes and DJing, particularly if you hear the quizzes I'm doing online at the moment on a Saturday night, go on Facebook, DJ Coxy in Dubai. Very easy to find. And if you're into just car photos, my Instagram is just car photos, and that's Coxy in Dubai. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Awesome. I'll put the links below as well in the description. Ian, fantastic. Thanks so much. Catch you again soon. Take care, buddy.
See you soon. Take care.
Didn't I tell you that there would be some top tips in that as to what you should rush out and buy right now? I think I'm going to be checking out the classifieds in a minute. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that conversation. It was great to catch up with a wonderful, wonderful chap over there in Dubai. I'm going to be lining up a few more of these, so stay tuned. Like I said, make sure you're subscribing to this channel. Make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that you get updated every time I upload one of these videos or any of my videos, including recent car reviews that I put up, the MG HS and the BMW 330e, all on this channel. Go and check those out. And of course, some great conversations I've had recently with people like Kevin Haggerty, James Rupper, and others. Also, make sure you follow me on all the social media channels. Like I said, hashtag BrownCarGuy. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to BrownCarGuy.com. And if you enjoyed this video, consider supporting me on patreon.com/Shazad Sheikh. And here you'll also find some unique piece of content exclusive to that URL only, which is kind of like my parody sequel to the original Cannonball Run movie. It's a lot of fun. Go check it out. Let me know what you thought of it. Thanks so much for watching this video. Like I said, stay tuned. More to come. See you again soon.